Hello, friends, and welcome to my new episode. I thought I'll do something special for today's episode since this episode is about one of our favorite filmmakers, Hrishikesh Mukherjee. So I thought instead of me just talking about Hrishikesh Mukherjee and his cinema, why not invite a couple of friends to chat about him and his movies? And make it a little more interesting rather than just me going on talking about Rishida. So today I have with me two of my close friends, Jayashree Chakravarti, who is a great film buff, and she is an esteemed member of the Films Critiques Circle of India. Jayashree has her own page, Third Vantage Point, where she writes beautifully about meaningful cinema. And it'll be a great pleasure, Jayashree, to have you in this chat and hear from you your views and your take on some of Hrishikesh Mukherjee's movies. Welcome to the chat, Jayashree.
Thank you, Pratik. Firstly, great opportunity to be here. As you know, I am a little reluctant with, video blogs and video chats and, have been avoiding it so far. But since, this was a topic which was very, very close to my heart, Hrishikesh Mukherjee being one of my favorite filmmakers, I just didn't want to let this opportunity go by. And the second reason, of course, was, I had the platform to chat with two of the most knowledgeable film buffs that I know of and learn from them. So, very, very excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to a pretty great, intense discussion with both of you. Thank you.
Yes, Jayashree, since you mentioned knowledgeable film buff, I think that's the right way to introduce Ayushman Mitra, who is an absolute encyclopedia on anything concerning cinema, music, books. He is, I think, one of the greatest film buffs I know personally. Ayushman has his channel called Ayush the Filmy Bookworm, where he talks about cinema and books. And he's also part of another channel called Classic Ka Ashik, where he talks about some classic films from the retro era. But apart from being the film encyclopedia that Ayushman is, I think what amazes me is not just his knowledge, but the fact that he remembers everything that he knows. And anytime I have ever asked Ayushman anything regarding cinema, the answer is always there at his fingertips. He just happens to know anything and everything. So welcome to this chat, Ayushman, and we're really looking forward to knowing your perspectives and your takes on Hrishikesh Mukherjee and his movies.
Thank you so much, Pratika. I am honored and I am humbled that coming from you, it was a huge compliment that I know movies at my fingertips, because I think the same goes for you as well. And in fact, I have imbibed quite a lot of things from you, especially regarding 60s and 70s. So I'm in August completely, and I'm quite happy and honored.
Let's begin the chat then on this note. And as both of you are aware, the topic for discussion today is the role of women in Hrishikesh Mukherjee's movies. And I thought who better than Jayashree to start the conversation talking about, Jayashree, you can talk about maybe some of your favorite women characters in Hrishi-da's movies.
Sure, Pratik. Like I said, it's a topic very, very close to my heart. Hrishikesh Mukherjee is, one of my most favorite filmmakers, and why not, right? I mean, the kind of cinema that he has made, the kind of characters he has created, the kind of worlds that he has created are so relatable to all of us. He came and told stories about you and me, right? And his characters were also believable. They thought like us. Felt like us, and everything was so touch and feel about his characters, and same goes with, of course, the women characters of his movies as well, right? So when we talk about the role of women in Hrishikesh Mukherjee cinema, I can think of so many very, very powerful women characters that he created. So what I'll do is that I'll pick up maybe a couple of characters that I'll talk about, and incidentally the two films and the two characters that I'm going to talk about, are both enacted by the same actress. And she was, in fact, I think the most favorite actress of Hrishikesh Mukherjee as well. You might have guessed I'm talking about Jaya
Yes.
Bhaduri. So, the two movies that I'm going to talk about are, I'll come to the second one next. Maybe I'll pick up the first one. So, the first movie I'm going to talk about is Abhimaan. Abhimaan, I think, came out in 1973, if I'm not wrong, and it had Jaya Bhaduri and Amitabh Bachchan in the lead roles. To me, I think Abhimaan is like a very very strong depiction of human relationships, relationship between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife on screen, and and it sort of set a benchmark in terms of how honest portrayals of of marital relationship, marital discords can be shown in the movie, with a lot of aesthetics, with a lot of culture and class and all of that. And so if you look at deep dive a little bit, if you look at the characters, right? So I'm talking about Uma, which was played by Jaya Bhaduri. So she is basically a person who breathes and lives music, right? So and we get introduced to her very very quickly. And she is basically, in her journey, she meets with Sudhir Kumar, who's another person who's involved with music. But what we see, between Sudhir and Uma is that although music is their life, right, for both of them, they come from very very different worlds, right? So for Uma, I think music is very pure and pristine, right? I mean, it's almost meditative in nature. Whereas Subir, music is the basis of his career. It's the path for his fame, adulation, and everything, which is more sort of an external manifestation of it. And Rishikesh Mukherjee establishes that very very quickly as they meet, right? So when they meet in in her village, I think in one of the early conversations, right? There's this dialogue exchange between them when Uma is very surprised that the kind of songs that Subir sings are very playing to the gallery, right? So she says that aap uchal kood wale gaane kyun gaate hain, and he says that that's what the audience likes, and but which is very startling and surprising for her because she comes from the world where music is just for yourself, right? Because she says जब गीत स्वयं के लिए गाया जाता है तो वो संगीत बन जाता है, right? So it's that philosophy that she lives with and she breathes in, and then she enters the world of Subir, and Subir in fact insists her that she should now get into the same world that he is in, and what is interesting with Abhimaan is, right, that you know, although so Rishikesh Mukherjee sketches Uma as somebody who's extremely grounded in terms of she understands, the difference of the world from where she comes and where Subir belongs. And she knows, in the back of her mind that, she's far more talented. And if she gets into the field that Subir is asking her to, she will possibly outshine him, right? But she never says that. But what he does is that he kind of gets David, right,
Yeah.
in the scene, and he gets David to sort of personify the thought that Uma has,
Yeah.
right? That, and he says the exact same things, that she should not get into the field, and then it will be very very different, and exactly that's what happens, right? So we see that she gets into the field of music, and then obviously she's better than him, and she starts outshining him, and then all sorts of things happen, and Sudhir starts getting deep and deep into his own shell, and there's a lot of ego and a lot of all of that comes in. What's very interesting also about Abhimaan, it's a true blue musical, and when I say that, I'm saying that because of two things. One is obviously, their journey is entirely about music. Both of them are into the field of music.
Yeah.
But what Hrishi-da also does is that, he uses music to kind of really tell their story and, take their journey forward, right? So right from, all the songs that we see from Meet Namila, where, he's establishing Subir's character, and then, Nadia Kinare, when he brings them together. Fairy India, where he's showing, the love and the affection that they have for each other, and then the initiation of their musical journey with Lute Koi Man Ka Nazar. And then, here comes the song, which is Up to Hai Tumse, right? Which is such a beautiful song about, their entire journey of, the rise to fame and moving apart from each other. I think that's very, very beautifully projected. And, it sort of uh, just establishes how music, which sort of brought them together, is now pulling them apart, right? And I think that's beautifully done. And both you know credit to both Amitabh and Jai Bhaduri, that they play those parts so well, throughout the movie, and that song, and that whole rise and fall of, rise of one character, fall of the other, and then moving apart, it's wonderfully shown, right? And then what we also see is that, when they enter, the next phase of their life, and they decide to have a family, and then they have, which unfortunately does not materialize, right? And that sort of further pulls them apart, right? Because she gets into a sort of a depression, and once so she agrees that she's not going to sing any further, because she sees what her singing is doing to Amitabh or Subir, right? And when the unfortunate incident happens, it has sort of a spiraling effect on both of them, right? So she knows that she's now into the shell, and because she's left her music, and she's now into this whole sort of a depression. So Beer also stops, sort of loses his contact with music and all of that, and they further move apart, and that is so heartbreaking, and so so wonderfully depicted on screen, in terms of how what impact it has on both of them. And then the other thing that really stands very strong in terms of their what I think is that the final resolution, if you will, right? I mean, now again, if you ask me, there has been a sort of what do you call it, criticism, if you will, about Abhimaan, that it is such a layered story. It is such a the conflict is so heavy between the couple, and you really show them breaking away, and then getting shattered because of the incident, and then it's just a simple song that they sing together,
The
and then they come
resolution is
back.
simplistic.
Very simplistic, right? But to me, I think that's how the resolution would have needed to be in Abhimaan, because, like I was saying, right, that the way music has played a very, very important role in their life, right, in terms of bringing them together, taking them apart, and so on and so forth. So the final bringing them together had to be through music, and naturally, when Tere Mere Milan Ki Rehna plays out, you see that had to be the song. Obviously, it's also about their dream that they had nurtured for very
Yes, I was
long,
just going to
right?
say that it
Yeah,
couldn't have been any other song but Tere Mere Milan, because
yeah,
that was the genesis of
yes,
their starting a new phase in life. And
yeah,
in fact,
yeah,
that's one of my favorite sequences, where Amitabh is composing the song,
yes,
initially, and Jaya Bhaduri
yeah,
is doing her regular housework, like I think the dhobi has come and she's giving him clothes, and
yeah,
she's
yeah,
overhearing Amitabh compose this tune. Just one thing I'd like to point out, something which you touched upon, that he made the character of David say that she's obviously more talented than Subir. Rishikesh Mukherjee's views on such things, and they were so refreshing to find that he made a male character say it, that she's obviously more talented than anyone could have said it. Bindu could have said it, or any one of the female characters could have said it. He made David say it, and there is a scene where I don't know who it was, whether it was Asrani or someone who tells David, तो इसका मतलब क्या वो नहीं कहेगी? And David says, ये तो और भी बुरी बात होगी. ये तो और भी, and that just sums up Hrishikesh Mukherjee's, take on that character. It just sums it up completely. ये तो और भी बुरा होगा. It's just such a telling moment in the movie.
It was summarized. So
Yeah. So I think it all comes together so wonderfully, right? And what do we say about the performances, right? I think absolutely brilliant performances by both Jaya Bhaduri and Amitabh Bachchan. Very very complex roles for both of them. There are so many layers. The characters, the arc of both the characters is so well defined, and there's so much to do, in both of their arcs, right? From their transformation from where they begin to where they go, and then where they end, right? I think absolutely fabulous performances. The chemistry that we see between them, I don't think anybody else could have done it, right? And of course, there are a lot of stories about the genesis of Abhimaan in terms of course, we know there's a Star is Born influence, and then there's this whole Pandit Ravi Shankar and Anupama Devi, influence, and of course the whole real versus real between Amitabh and Jaya themselves, right? That that's what was projected in the screen. So I don't know again, what Hrishikesh Mukherjee was thinking, and I don't know if this is the platform to get into there, but maybe because there was a similarity between real and real, it kind of came out even so more realistic and so wonderful, on the screen, and hats off to both Jaya Bhaduri and Amitabh Bachchan to kind of pull it off in such a brilliant manner.
Fabulous. They were both fabulous in the movie, and the inspirations could have been A Star Is Born, or as you said, Pandit Ravi Shankar and Anupama Devi, or even Amitabh and Jaya in their lives, but I think on its own, Abhimaan stands out as a very individual story. A very, very individual story. And it primarily stands for me on Jaya Bhaduri and Amitabh Bachchan's performance. I think they're both absolutely brilliant. I'm a huge Jaya Bhaduri fan. So, to me, Abhimaan is undoubtedly one of her best works. And she has so much of good work to choose from. It's a difficult task, but to me, Abhimaan will definitely be the pinnacle of her as a performer.
Absolutely, yeah. The two performances, and of course, what do we say about the music, right? I mean, I think it's like a golden album, and even if you say golden, I think you will say less about it, right? So it's absolutely brilliant.
And as you very rightly pointed out at one part of your analysis, that the music in Abhimaan is actually in sync, and it takes the story forward. So every song has a very specific purpose, has a very specific part to play in the movie. It's just not yet another filler or a lovely song being inserted in a movie. It's very much part and parts of the plot, and the way the movie moves. As you mentioned, every song is strategically placed for the story to move forward and to show how the story is moving forward.
And that is
musical in the true sense.
Musical in the true sense, right? Because music plays its part to tell the story.
No, it's not a filler.
It is not a filler at all, and every song plays its part, and how beautiful does it come together at the end, right? I mean, with that final scene, then she breaks down. I think it just makes everybody emotional. I don't know if there's been any time when I've watched Abhimaan and I've not cried at the end, right?
Scene, I don't think there'll be too many people with dry eyes during that scene. It's just.
And I think both of them also didn't require glycerin. I feel so. I mean,
it was very
maybe
natural,
they
and
really became emotional and got into the skin of them.
Absolutely.
And that's the power of cinema, right? That, I think so. I mean, all of us would have watched Abhimaan so many times, but every time we've watched it, we break down, we know what is going to come.
Everything we know, but still, it affects us and it moves us, and it's so powerful even today.
Yes.
It's nearly 50 years since the movie came out, about 48 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Nearly 50
Correct.
years, yeah, long time.
So that was
So the thing is
Abhimaan.
that
And the second film that I want to talk about is yet again Jaya Bhaduri starred, like I'd already mentioned, and it's also an Amitabh Bachchan starred. So I'm going to talk about Mili, which came 2 years after
Yeah.
Abhimaan, and again a fabulous, fabulous film. Personally, I think Mili is my most favorite, Hrishikesh Mukherjee movie. You can say that Mili is relatively simpler movie than Abhimaan because it has, it's a more simpler story. It doesn't have so much of heaviness, if you will, right, of Abhimaan. There are a lot of lighter parts to Mili and also. And of course, there is a progression to a drama and all of that. But I think what stands out, of course, in Mili is Mili, right? I mean, the way that character has been written and etched out is so powerful, so beautiful. And very, very early on, I think Hrishikesh Mukherjee establishes that, right? That, here's this character who's, very bubbly, so full of life, and, whatever she touches, she induces life in that, right? So, every person who stays in that building, right from the lift man to the young kids to everybody, right? So the women in that apartment, to of course her family, right? They are all touched by the power that Mili has, right, about lighting up lives. And it's not that she's just a bubbly chirpy girl who's kind of just making people happy. We see that she's also has a very strong mind of her own, right? So very, very early on we see that people come to her to solve problems, and she's like sort of a born leader. She goes and solves those
yes.
problems. Everybody listens to her. So very quickly, it's established that this character is very, very interesting, and she has so many facets to it, and it's going to be an interesting ride. And then of course, we know that Shekhar Dayal comes to that stay in that terrace apartment of that building, and he's like this brooding, angry young man who's coming in, and everybody's afraid of him. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He brings in a lot of baggage. We know that some bad things have happened to him, and that's really impacted him, and he kind of pushes out everybody, right? But what we see in Millie is so beautifully is that how Millie approaches this man, right? This man who's broken, who has a lot of darkness in him. She kind of just goes and tries to break those walls that he has created around him, right? I mean, he himself says that I'm the Dush Rakshas, right? To the kids, that's what he
Yes.
says. And so that's of course he has all that baggage. He knows that he's not a pleasant personality. He doesn't mix with people, and then Millie goes and starts transforming him, right? With all that, of course, like the life affirming character that she is. She can change people. She can transform people, and Rishikesh Mukherjee creates some wonderful moments of companionship and tenderness between them, right? I specifically remember that scene where they're trying to see the stars, right, through the telescope, and then Millie says that maybe ये दो तारे हैं जो इसमें मेरी माँ और आपकी माँ में दोस्ती हो गई होगी, and that's when Shekhar says that क्या तुम मेरी माँ से मिलोगी, right? That's where so Millie has now touched him, and he is kind
Lets
of
his
coming
guard
out of
down.
his shell, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's guard down, and he wants her to meet the most precious person of her life, right? I mean, of his life. So that is a very, very powerful sequence, I think. Through again, a very simple set of things. Rishikesh Mukherjee achieves that, right? So which is very beautifully done. And in the same light, I also want to talk about the other thing which Rishikesh Mukherjee does, right? So he says through the character of Mili that people will have a lot of baggage. They will come with a lot of darkness. We don't know what's happened in their life, right? I mean, there might be very, very genuine reasons why they behave in a certain way, and we see that happening with Shekhar, of course, in the film, and we also see that happening with Aruna Irani's character Rumna
Yes.
Singh, right? I mean, we get to know her that she also has a lot of baggage and all of that. But if you look at Mili's interaction with both of these characters, right, you can see that you should be like Mili, right? That you have to take the clutter away and you have to connect with people from heart to heart, right? And take their goodness and give you their, give them your goodness and just, create that bond and, take it forward. So I think that was very, very beautifully done that, we are in no position to judge people,
Yes.
whoever they are. And we just need to connect with people and be good, right? In fact, I think there's also this dialogue in Mili which says that, दोस्ती अच्छी या बुरी नहीं होती दोस्त अच्छे या बुरे होते हैं, right? So it's
Correct.
again Hrishikesh Mukherjee saying that know the people and know the people without their baggage, and then it can turn out to be very beautiful. So I think that was beautiful. And of course, then the story switches, right? And Millie falls sick, and then she becomes bedridden, and then we see that Shekhar, who kind of got enlightened by Millie, is now sort of becoming her guardian angel, right? And he comes and he says that I have to now show you hope. That's the mantra that he comes with, right? And some of the interactions that he has, of course, with Mili, those letter exchanges that they do between themselves, with the flowers and all, that's so beautifully done. I think that was amazing in terms of that thing, and of course he shows the light to even Mili's father, right, Ashok Kumar, that that's I'm going to take her, I'm going to marry her, I'm going to take her, and all of that. That's amazing. And I think the other part that I want to briefly touch upon is also Mili's relationship with Ashok Kumar, which is her
That's
father, right?
wonderful. I think one of the most
Wonderful.
tender and beautiful
Yeah.
father-child,
Father-daughter.
father-daughter
Yeah.
relationship ever explored in
Yeah,
cinema.
yeah.
I absolutely agree.
And hence it is so right that the film starts and ends with Ashok Kumar, right? So the first shot is about Ashok Kumar,
Yes.
the last shot is
Correct.
about Ashok Kumar. I think that beautifully kind of sort of pays a homage to that relationship, right? That how that it's the daughter's story, but it's also the father's story in a way, right? So I think that was wonderful. I know we have discussed this before, but I just want to bring that point, right? To me, Mili, of course, like I said, that it's one of my most, it is my most favorite Hrishikesh Mukherjee films. But I think where I would have wanted Mili to go, right?
I know what you're going to say.
To me, I think Mili just falls a little short of reaching its catharsis because I think Mili should have should have had a melancholic end, but Hrishikesh Mukherjee, being Hrishikesh Mukherjee, he
Yes.
didn't want to do that, right? And especially, of course, he had already done that in Anand,
Anand,
right?
yes.
Where again a very, very vivacious character, and then he goes through a sickness, and we know how Anand ends. So Hrishikesh Mukherjee definitely didn't want to do that. So he leaves us with that glitter of hope
Hope,
that
yeah.
maybe a miracle happens and maybe they live happily ever after. We do not know. Of course, that I think worked better overall for the movie.
Hey,
But,
works for someone like me because I would have been absolutely heartbroken to see any different ending of Mili. And
Yeah.
knowing Hrishikesh Mukherjee, he didn't do Anand with Raj Kapoor because he couldn't show Raj Kapoor dying.
Raj
Raj
Kapoor,
Kapoor being
yes.
such a
Yeah.
close friend of his. And I'm sure,
Yeah.
given the relationship he shared with Jaya Bhaduri, he
Correct.
would have never wanted
Yes.
to shoot a death sequence with her either. So and I as I said, the ending works perfectly for me because
yeah.
after having undergone that full journey with Mili, right from her chirpy, bubbly self to her bedridden phase, although I know probably what the outcome will be, but I want to be left behind with that, glimmer of a hope that, the plane takes off and, maybe something
Yes.
good will happen, something.
I think even Ashok Kumar mouths the dialogue at the very beginning of the film that मुझे मालूम है कि मिली कभी वापस नहीं आएगी. So yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So it is very evident. It is very evident that
It's just
there is
that
every chance that he might
Hrishikesh
not
Mukherjee
come
doesn't
back.
want to show us
Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
I mean, to me, it was a sort of a tonality shift, if you will, right? I mean, where the film was
was going.
going
Yes, I
from,
agree.
yeah,
I agree.
and
yes,
suddenly the
yeah, yeah,
tonality shifts a little bit.
You're just preparing yourself for the worst when suddenly.
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
And it's like थोड़ा खाली रह गया to me, right? So,
Nahi, nahi. To me,
again,
it was the perfect way to end.
relief,
Otherwise,
relief.
people, yeah, man, they
you know,
sort of make it
even when
hard,
I see
right?
Anand,
Yes,
being a movie about a cancer patient and a terminally ill patient, is
Hmm.
so positive and life affirming and light till the last
Hmm.
15 minutes when the film absolutely sucks you dry. The last
Hmm.
15 till it reaches that point, it is so full of fun and that
yes, yes.
on
Metaphors. Yes,
subsequent viewings, when I know the end is coming, I don't want to see the movie anymore. It's happened with me that I have not seen
yes,
the end of Anand, although that is
Yeah,
the most powerful part and that is
yeah,
really the emotional high point of the movie.
yeah,
But
yeah,
somehow I can't get myself to see it over and over again. I'd rather see it till the part because I know what's going to happen, and which is
uh,
why Mili to me was such a surprise and such a pleasant surprise to see that the
Hmm.
end wasn't what I was expecting it to be.
Yeah. See, again with Anand, I break down every time I watch in the
yes,
last
yes,
scene.
yes,
So maybe I was prepared to break down, and that did not
Yeah,
happen. So
yeah,
that sort
yeah.
of left a little bit of, a tiny bit of gap in my mind in terms of how it should have ended. But nevertheless, like I said, beautiful film. I
It
think
is.
both
It is.
Mili
It
and
is.
Abhimaan, right? I mean, again, Hrishikesh Mukherjee wanted to make positive films, and that's why he made. I think the ends for both Mili and Abhimaan are so positive
Yeah,
from that
yes,
perspective.
yeah,
They give you hope that
yeah.
life can be very very wrong and very very dark, but at the end of the day, you still have to live with hope. So. Brilliant characters, brilliant movies, and that's why I just wanted to talk about these things.
Well, that's wonderful. I remember
right.
reading an interview of Rishikesh Mukherjee movies where he says, I think he was asked that why are your movies always feel good, and so he said, I know
Yeah.
there is good and bad
Yeah,
in the world. I prefer not to show the bad. I prefer to show
Mm,
only
yes,
the good. I'm comfortable and happy showing the good in the world. I prefer, it's not
exactly.
that I
right.
don't know that there is bad in the world. There is bad in the world, but
Yeah,
I rather not
Yeah.
show it. I rather show the good, and I think that reflects
Exactly.
in all of his cinema.
all of
Yeah.
us.
You
I
know,
think I read somewhere. He said that there are. I mean, of course, there are bad, but they're more like bad situations. They are not bad
bad
people.
people, exactly,
They
exactly.
behave
Yes,
badly because of bad situations. So I think he was a firm believer of that, and that's reflected in all of his cinema. Absolutely.
That was quite wonderful, and a couple of your observations, as always, are a
very
little
unique actually.
different
They were
from
very unique.
the regular way of thinking,
One
and
of correct.
yeah. So Ayushman, let us hear about some of your favorite women characters.
Uh, well, yeah, you both of you talked about the positivity in Rishikesh Mukherjee's film. So I would like to talk about two of the most positive, spontaneous, and public characters, female characters of Rishikesh Mukherjee. The first one is, of course, Guddi from the film Guddi,
Yeah.
Jaya Bahaduri's debut in Hindi films, and
Yeah.
I just love that character. I mean, I saw Goody when I was of on screen Goody's age, so I could relate, and I was fascinated with films too, like her. So I could totally relate to the character because even my parents sometimes wouldn't understand why I'm doing certain things. Like I used to emulate certain film stars and try to wear outfits like them, And they were at see that is लड़की का क्या होगा, what will happen to this guy, So,
Mm.
so I could totally relate to that character, and I love the entire arc that character takes. I mean, in the first half, then to the second half, and that
Yeah.
transformation was shown so beautifully by Jaya Bhaduri. And
Yeah.
I mean, and it's so relatable. At the same time, it's very, very relatable. We have seen so many people. I mean, at least I have seen so many people who are totally glued to the silver screen, and they start living that life.
Yeah.
And when it comes crashing down, yes, it's heartbreaking, but it's also a kind of self realization for them. and I mean Jayabhadri portrayed that magnificently, and I think
Absolutely.
that film is also maybe it taught the entire nation how to play that game of statue, which could be used to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and I heard it. I mean, when I was growing up, of course, it was a kind of a trend in schools and all. But I heard it from many of my uncles and aunts that this game was popularized by Goody. So it was a very popular character, and obviously it has its reasons. And I really liked scene where she says that she rejects Shamit Manja and says that I can't marry you. You're a nice guy, but I can't marry you because I have given my heart to Dharmendra. And Shamit Manja was crestfallen, and he also was maybe he was thinking that what is this? I mean. He asked us, he confirmed, Dharmendra, मतलब वो film
Film
star,
star.
because he was not able to believe it. And the entire journey, and Hrishikesh Mukherjee, I must say, I mean, it was brave enough of him to show the real face of the tinsel town. I mean, the sadness, the politics, the grief behind all the glitter, and best exemplified by the character of Asrani shown there.
Yeah.
I mean, I also personally know a person who ran away to Mumbai to become a hero, and he became a vegetable vendor. So I could totally relate to that character. I mean, that is the beauty of Rishikesh Mukherjee's films, right? I mean, these are very your next door neighbor. They can be your acquaintances, your friends, and that's why they're so relatable.
Very
To
believable
anybody
characters. Very
very believable
true to life
characters,
characters. Yeah.
true to life characters, and also there's this scene where Jabhat is absolutely brilliant, where uh, Pran is giving a gift to Dharmendra. She gladly accepts it, and Jabhat is thinking, आपने इससे गिफ्ट क्यों लिया? आपको नहीं लेना चाहिए था, आप वापस कर दीजिए.
ये बहुत बुरा आदमी है.
ये बहुत बुरा आदमी है, and Dharmendra laughs loudly, and I always liked Dharmendra laughing out loudly. Really, I mean, it was very
Spontaneous and
so spontaneous and natural. And he says that Pran Saab is industry के सबसे भले आदमियों में से एक है, one of the nicest guys, and we all know that is true actually. Anyone who has read a bit about Pran Saab. So these all these scenes, they are brilliantly executed, brilliantly performed, and at the end where they put up a charade to show Mili that who is the right person for her, and I mean who she should accept. In the end, when she sings Ajare Pardesi, which is exactly from Hrishikesh, which is mentor Bimal Royal, and Madhumati actually. So that entire her entire posture, her body language, everything transforms. And she has done it so beautifully. It's not easy for a performer, I believe, to do that. And it's not easy for a script writer to kind of take that art.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that way, I think Hrishikesh Mukherjee has done a wonderful, wonderful job as a script writer.
I was about to tell you, Ayushman, is that you
Yes.
said that scene about Shamit Bhanjo saying that why are you in love with Dharmendra? She was relating to Dharmendra of Anupama. I mean, imagine you're watching Anupama and Dharmendra. So why won't you be in love with him, right? I mean, it's so obvious.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
so,
yes, yes.
I mean, Dharmendra, I don't think has never looked so good, the way he looked in Anupama. So, and what Hrishikesh Mukherjee brilliantly does in Goody, I think, and he had this trait. Right? So a lot of his films have this self-referencing to his other movies.
Yes,
and
yes,
and
yes.
Goody gave him the amazing platform to do that,
Yes.
right? So there's a lot of Anupama. There are scenes from, I think, Fir Kab Milogi, they show that Dilip Kumar
shooting.
scene. Yeah, shooting. I think there's a little bit of Mere Apne too, which
There is a complete redoing of the song from Asli Nakli, Tujhe Jeevan Ki Dor Se Bandh Diya
Yes,
Hai,
Tujhe Jeevan
where
Ki
she's
Dor Se
dreaming
Bandh
that
Diya
she and Dharmendra instead of Sadhna and Devanand are
Yes,
doing exactly the same
yes,
scene.
yes, yes.
So there's a
Yes.
lot of Hrishikesh Mukherjee cinema in Goody, right?
Goody,
Which
yes.
is beautifully integrated in the story.
Integrated,
No, and I think the other thing what Hrishikesh Mukherjee very, very brilliantly does in Goody is he pays an homage to his own industry,
Yeah.
showing that it's not just about glamour and comfortable and flashy lifestyles. There is a lot of hard work. There is a lot
Hard
of
work.
heartbreak. There is a lot of
Yeah.
blood, sweat, and tears that go into making a movie. And stars are not just these cushy, comfortable lifestyle wala people
Yeah,
who
yeah,
have it easy. He's actually showed
yes.
the hard work and the grind that goes behind in making a
Mm.
movie, and I think that's been shown so
I
brilliantly.
particularly like the scene. I mean, actually, I was almost in tears when I watched it for the first time, where Dharmendra is showing a studio in shambles and
Yes.
saying that this
Yes.
is the
Yes.
studio by the great Vimalda. I shot here for Bandini. Obviously, it must be true. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
Bandini. So, and he said, यही होता है ना studios सारे रह जाते हैं, गुम हो जाते हैं. And that entire scene was so touching, and
Yeah.
Shamit Banja himself was in tears. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, he empathizes with Dharmendra, and he realizes that, I mean, being a film star is not about garnering a lot of female fans and
Yeah.
just I mean, a light-hearted kind
Yeah.
of job. It has got a lot of, as Pratika said, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very well portrayed.
Yeah. And I think the other thing which is also very good in Mili, right, is that while he's showing all the glam and glitter of the tinsel town and what really happens, Hrishikesh Mukherjee is also grounding the story and making that a very, very believable character, right? Goody, because the way he projects her relationship with her family, specifically Sunita Saner, right? I mean, you know,
Yes. Very beautiful.
full bond between them, right?
Very
And she
nice.
said that I'm your bhabi and I'm not your mother. And there's small things between them, and I think that was amazingly done. So that makes it more believable that Buddhi is not somebody who's come from a different world. She is
Well, yes, yes.
is me and you, and we
Yeah.
behave like this. This is our family, this is our world, and then we have all these dreams and everything. So I think that was amazing. I also remembered one more thing which Hrishikesh Mukherjee does beautifully in Goody. I think. See, at the end of the day, it's a coming of age story, right? And
Yeah.
Goody
Coming of
is
age, yes.
Goody. It's a Goody is Goodia, right? So if you remember the credit, the way the credits scene is kind of picturized in Goody. It's all about dolls, right? So Hrishikesh Mukherjee starts
Yes,
with a
yes.
baby doll, and then
Baby
all
doll, yeah,
the
yeah.
charge
Yes.
of dolls that come in, and then it kind of culminates into I think a bridal doll or something like
I
that.
did.
So I thought,
Yes.
right
The
there,
title card.
I
It
told you
was
the
a yeah.
story,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
So
and
yeah, yes, yes.
that was
Wonderful
amazing.
observation, actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that was wonderful. I thought.
That's what makes that character so relatable even now. I mean, uh, it's a wonderful, as I said, wonderful character and wonderfully performed by Chairman.
Absolutely.
And the second character I'm going to talk about, I have always, it's a personal feeling though, but I have always felt that it's an extension of Goody. If Goody grows up, that's the character of Manju in Khoobsurat. And
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was
Wonderful.
portrayed by Rekha,
Wonderful,
which
yeah.
is
Yeah.
kind of a game changer for Rekha, in my opinion.
Yes.
Where she was seriously taken as a performer of
Yes.
high caliber by critics and audience alike. For that, she was known for a glamorous image.
Wonderful movie.
Yes, wonderful movie. And Manju is also that spunky, vivacious, and a girl with a lot of self-confidence, lot of leadership qualities. I think a kind of, you can say, an amalgamation of Buddhi and Mili maybe on that, right? And because she likes to solve the problems of others. She goes to her Didi Sasural and she tries and solves the problems of all the brothers, four brothers. So that character had so much of spunk, so much of energy, and what I particularly liked about that character is that though she was very mischievous and spunky, but her morals were at the right place, and very obviously from a that's what you expect from a Rishikesh Mukherjee film, and I mean that comes through very sharply at the end. I mean, not at the end, but at the last half an hour of the film or so, where the character of Ashok Kumar falls sick, and she tends to him, she cares for him, and she even reprimands the doctor played by
Yes.
Puri, which
Yes.
actually encapsulates what the character Manju is all about. She's a very strong, progressive girl. She might be, might appear to be a light-hearted, fluffy kind of a girl, but she has got a uh,
Depth.
lot of character depth
Yeah.
in her. And and it's one of the most progressive characters I have seen in that era at least.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the fact that people are coming to quote unquote see
Her
her
sister.
TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, her sister, played by Aradhana. I think her name was Aradhana,
Yeah.
and she says that ये कोई गुड़िया है, कोई चीज है जो इसे देखने आएंगे, क्या है, and she makes her annoyance very clear in front of her would-be in-laws also. And when she shouts, and Rakesh Roshan is surprised, अरे आप तो बहुत जोर जोर से बात करती है. I love these expressions, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the way the arguments she has with Rakesh Roshan's character. He was called Inder actually. So
Yes.
these are the dimensions which that character had, and I also like the rebellious streak in her. I mean, Hrishi Mukherjee also kept that in control because there's a scene which I like very much, where this youngest guy. I love that character actually, Ranjit
Raji
Chaudhary's
Chaudhary.
character.
Yeah.
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 Yes, I love Ranjit Chaudhary a lot. And so Ranjit Chaudhary's character actually blackmails his elder brothers and takes some pocket money from them.
Yeah.
And he says thinks that that's also kind of a rebellion. He says that to Manju Didi मैंने ऐसा सब किया. So he says नहीं ये गलत बात है. इसे blackmailing कहते हैं. अब तो जो करते हैं निर्मल आनंद के लिए करते हैं. So that dimension is also quite interesting to observe from today's point of view. And to think that the previous film before Khubsurat, Rekha's filmography was Karmyug, and that says that how Hrishi Mukherjee always had a knack of picking up actors or actresses out of their comfort zone or out of their zones and giving them roles which
Absolutely.
would be their most memorable roles probably.
Absolutely.
I come to that later, but there are lots of examples like
Yeah.
that. But this character probably, this character probably is one of the prime examples of that.
Since you're talking about Khoobsurat, it's again a huge favorite film of mine as well. This scene where she reprimands Om Shiv Puri and she reminds him, that everything is not about fees and this and that, and you've got to have your humane side and this that. I remember at the end of it when he comes and sees Ashok Kumar and he's about to leave, she actually goes to him and she says sorry. She said, "उस दिन मैंने कुछ ज्यादा ही शायद बोल दिया." Om Shiv Puri tells her that no, you did the right thing actually by reminding me of what my real duties are. So Hrishikesh Mukherjee is always about balance. If he's showing a rebellious girl or he's showing a spunky girl, it doesn't mean that she loses her softness, she loses her sweetness. It's a fine balance between both sides of the character, which is so well brought out by Rekha.
Yeah.
Just a little scene where he needn't have shown that scene where she says sorry to him, but it's just his way of balancing the character so beautifully.
And given that you're talking about this balance, again there's a criticism about Khubsurat. I mean, I am only talking about criticisms that towards the end, right, when Ashok Kumar gets sick and she's taking care of him and she's tending to him, there's this criticism that in order to make a rebellious girl acceptable to the family and to Dina Pathak, you have to show her indulgence into domestication and all of that. I have heard this domestication. I mean, criticism. See, we are in a very woke world, right, where feminism is very different definition and all of that.
Yeah.
Which is very, very, irritating to me, right? I mean,
it just bemuses me that there are actually people who can think that way. I had never even thought of it till you brought it up.
Even I didn't think about that.
I was so shocked when I heard this, and I'm like, no, guys, you cannot think it like that, right? I mean, it's wrong on so many levels. But I thought
I don't think Hrishi-da thought about that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think
Yeah.
I'm 100%
And the other thing that I wanted to also talk about, see, you talked about her relationship with Ranjit Chaudhary, which is wonderful, right? And you know what is interesting in Khubsurat, when you look at Manju's interaction with the youngest member of the family, which is Ranjit Chaudhary, and the eldest member of the family,
Ashok
which is
Kumar.
Ashok Kumar. I think she's closest to these two people the most, right? Other than of
yes,
course Rakesh
Rakesh
Roshan, with
Roshan, yeah.
whom she has a romantic relationship, but that shows the range and acceptability of that character
Yeah,
character.
across
Yes,
that entire spectrum of people,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is so amazing, right? I mean,
no,
again, a similarity to Mili there, right? Everybody likes
yeah,
her, right?
I just love her equation with Ashok Kumar throughout the movie. You
Yeah,
know,
from the
it's so
movie, yeah.
it's so. I mean,
helping
that's so
helping him
Rishikesh
in
Mukherjee.
gardening,
That's
and
that's so
yes,
Rishikesh Mukherjee.
yes.
It's
At the
it's
very end, when she says that girlfriend,
yeah.
no, abhi girlfriend nahi, bahu chahiye. No,
yeah,
it's such a sweet moment.
And I, and
Very
I and I
nice.
and I love the way Ashok Kumar says Bahu. He says, just
Yeah,
enunciating the word even more. Bahu. He says
enunciating.
it's
Yes, yes.
just beautiful. It's so sweet.
Even if you see the film, even Deena Pathak doesn't actually quote unquote hate Manju. She says that she is a nice girl, but she is a little she is
yeah,
indisciplined, and she is
yeah.
not suitable for to be the bahu of this.
Yeah. She,
She's
That's
just
what
she
she
wonderful.
says.
misleads Manju and she thinks that
Yes,
जो लड़की हमेशा हंसती रहती है हंसाती रहती है वो सीरियस या उसमें वो
Yeah,
डेप्थ
yeah,
कहाँ आएगी she always feels that
yes,
and then she
yes,
is first hand witness to how responsible and
yes.
how
And that's why actually Hrishikesh Mukherjee devised that scene, not that the feminist
yeah, I
point of view.
mean,
In my honest
this
opinion,
criticism, I really have no way to answer such
I
criticism or
mean,
counter
yeah,
no
such
point in
criticism.
countering that.
It's just, I guess,
yeah,
different people take different things from the same cinema.
Of
That's
course,
the beauty of
of
yeah,
cinema,
course.
actually.
That's the beauty of
Yeah,
cinema.
how
Yes,
different
it
people
works
can
at
take
so
different
many
things.
levels.
But this is
yeah.
something I never thought of,
Yeah,
really.
I
That
mean, actually, I mean, going back, Abhimaan has the same criticism, right? That why did, Uma have to leave her career? I mean, you have to understand what that character is, right? And
yeah,
what music means to her.
yeah.
Music never meant career
Career
to
to
her,
her,
right? So
exactly,
you have to
exactly.
understand that.
Yeah,
It's not,
yeah,
there are no set rules of
yeah,
how people have to behave,
yeah.
right? So,
Also, I think people don't think it from the social context of those days or those times. When those films were made. I mean, Khoobsurat was
Yes,
made.
yes.
Yes, yes. They
I,
don't think think it from today's millennial perspective.
yeah,
having
yeah,
having said that, it's quite an interesting topic, and I'll just slightly move away because I thought I'll sort of talk about my favorite characters. But since you brought this topicality thing, I just thought I'll mention it here. That according to me, I think Abhimaan and Khoobsurat stand the test of time. I mean, they don't look dated to me
yeah,
personally.
yeah.
They don't look dated
Correct,
to me,
correct.
even from a feminist point of view or a woman's point of view. It doesn't look.
No,
They don't
not
look
at all.
dated to me.
No, no,
What
not at all.
what looks like it could be changed if it was made today is Anuradha. The
Yes,
movie
Yes,
Anuradha.
yes.
If
yes,
Anuradha was made today,
yes, yeah,
I doubt Hrishikesh Mukherjee would have kept the ending the same.
yeah,
I doubt he would have kept it the same. He would have probably worked it out a little differently. Because today when I say Anuradha, as favorite a film it is of mine as and as great a movie as it is, it's the ending which makes it appear from the time it was made
Yes,
and not as
yes, yes,
relevant
yes,
or as current as today. Maybe
yes,
he would have used different devices to justify the ending had he decided to keep the ending the same. But that's conjecture. I really don't know. But Anuradha is one film which makes me wonder that had Rishikesh Mukherjee been alive today and had he made it today, would he have kept the same ending? I really don't know
yeah,
the answer to that.
very
yeah,
I'm
true.
pretty sure about Abhimaan and Khoobsurat because I think they the endings are the way they should be
so
even
it
in
should be,
today's day and
yeah,
age. Anuradha, I am sort of 50-50. I don't know what Hrishi-da would have done
yeah,
had he made Anuradha today. That's the only movie of his which I feel is very firmly entrenched in a certain time period. The
yes,
character of Balraj Sahani, the character of Leela
Uh,
Naidu. They are very.
Bhattacharya.
I mean, he shows Balraj Sahani to be a nice guy, but I remember Balraj Sahni's expressions and his actions
Yeah.
in the song when she's singing
Hi,
you know,
Rebodin Tuna.
Hi Re Within. You know, in today's context, that looks really rude and that looks really not the character Balraj Sahni is actually playing, you know. So it sort of jumps out. It sort of makes you
It does.
squirm a little that, oh God, why is he so uninterested and why is he so detached? And this is actually to the point of being rude, where she's singing and Abhi Bhattacharya is listening to her enthralled and he's like turning pages of a journal and walking away. And, you know, it's just sort of doesn't stand very well in today's time. Anuradha. But otherwise, you know, Anuradha is a huge, huge favorite film of mine.
Mine as well. Yeah.
But you know that I think that has its limitations as far as you know being timeless is concerned. It is sort of very firmly entrenched.
Probably he had the audience's preferences or tastes of those days in mind while scripting
Perhaps,
it.
perhaps, and as you said, you know, perhaps that was more in sync with the thinking of the time. You know, which has
Yes.
changed so much today, which has changed so much
Yes.
over the years. So maybe it'll be very interesting if you know a director from the new era, decides to remake Anuradha and gives it a more modern flavor and a more you know current flavor. It'll be quite interesting to make that kind of a movie. Because it'll be very difficult to make given the story. It'll be very difficult.
Yeah.
It'll be quite
Yes, very
challenging if
difficult.
someone like Shujit Sarkar or someone who sort of makes the middle of the road kind of cinema, makes cinema with believable characters, real characters. If he decides to remake Anuradha, I'll be very interested to see how he ends the movie. It'll be
Khubsurat was remade though.
By
yeah, yeah.
As Khubsurat.
I think Ratna Pathak played Dina Pathak's
Yes,
role.
Dina
I've not
Pathak.
seen the movie,
Yes,
but I've
yes.
heard of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Sonam Kapoor played.
Sonam Kapoor played.
And Fawad Khan, I think. Right?
Fawad Khan was there. Yes.
I've not seen the
But
movie.
they changed the story and
It's a very different setting, and it's
difference. They showed that Manju is this character's mother. Actually,
yeah.
there's a cross reference to the original.
Oh, okay.
Sort of, yes. These are two of my favorite.
They're both
Very nice
wonderful
film.
films. They're both wonderful films, and as you
Wonderful.
rightly said, Khoobsurat I think was a game changer for Rekha. And it was I think the movie. I think Jayashree, you were mentioning once that Khoobsurat came in 1980 and Umrao Jam came in 1981, and it just
81.
completely changed how Rekha was seen after
Was
those
seen
two
after,
movies.
yes.
Yes, absolutely. And hats off to
That's
Hrishikesh.
amazing.
I personally, for me also, I never used to think that Rekha was a great actress, but when
I think
saw
it
movies
was the
back
same.
then,
It was the same for most people. I think
exactly. So,
Yeah. If I need to talk about some of my favorite characters, women characters from Hrishikesh Mukherjee movies, I'll actually be discussing two films which are, which are probably my favorite Hrishikesh Mukherjee movies in any case. And he's made so many wonderful movies that it's hard for me to choose his top movies or my most favorite Hrishikesh Mukherjee movies. But it's hard from number 3 onwards because for me, number 1 and 2 are firmly entrenched. Number 1 is Anupama. It's my all-time favorite Hrishikesh Mukherjee movie. And the lead character in Anupama, that of Uma, played by Sharmila Tagore, has got to be perhaps my most favorite women characters in his movies. Why just in his movies? Perhaps one of my most favorite women characters I have seen in Indian cinema. And it's quite amazing because Sharmila Tagore rarely talks in the movie. She rarely speaks. Her silences, her pauses, her looks, her stares, her sometimes looking down. I think that does most of the acting, rather than spoken words or, it's the nuances and the body language of Sharmila, which is absolutely fantastic for me to watch. And, Anupama, what's interesting is, to me, the character stands out even more because it's in direct contrast with the character of Shashikala, who plays the role
Yes,
of
yes.
Annie. You know, I think
Yes.
It
it,
did, to
yeah,
kind of amplify
Yeah.
it's just,
about
Yes.
the louder and the more talkative Shashikala is, that much is spoken by Anupama, by Uma's
Quite
silence, by
yes,
her silence, and
yes.
it's fantastic. And I think, the portrayal of this troubled character who bears this guilt of being responsible for her mother's death, and this blow hot blow cold relationship her father has with her, the psychological effect that it has on the character of Uma is so beautifully depicted, is so wonderfully depicted. And I've read a lot of reviews and a lot of discussion on Anupama, where she comes across as weak and subdued, and I don't think she's weak at all. I don't think she's weak
Okay.
at all. She's quiet, she's troubled, she's sensitive, but I don't think Uma is weak by any stretch. Yeah, it takes
true.
the catalyst
The
is the
guilt has
character of
made her
Dharmendra.
introverted.
The catalyst is
Guilt has made her.
the character of Dharmendra, who sort of
Yeah.
Yes.
who pushes her to come out of her shell, and
Yeah.
you know as
Express herself.
I've discussed this quite a few times, I think even with you, Jayashree, that when Dharmendra says that agar usko aana hai wo aayegi, and he doesn't,
Yeah.
when Shashikala, I think, asks him
Hmm.
that, why aren't you doing anything? And he says
Hmm.
that, नहीं, उसको मालूम है कि मैं मेरे दरवाजा उसके लिए हमेशा खुला है, अगर वो उसको आना है वो आएगी. And I think that acts as a catalyst for the character of Sharmila to eventually defy her father and take the step that she takes. So that's criticized, or it's sort of looked at differently by different people. But to me, it's the single spark that sets her character free, or it just sort of in a way liberates her to have that strength and have that courage to take the decision of going to him. I know you
I
view it
differ a little
differently.
bit.
I know that.
I know. See, to me, again, of course, she is a strong character, right? There's a lot of inner resilience in her, and she doesn't speak, but she feels, right? And she's very perceptive, like you were saying. But and we see her transformation, right? As the story progresses, I think we were discussing the other day, right? So there is this scene when she's kind of walking up the stairs after her father has been angry on her, and she's always been very scared of him, right? But when she's walking up the stairs, she gives a smile. So we know that there is a change,
It's
right?
a very knowing smile. It's a
Yes.
very telling smile.
Very
Yeah.
No dialogues, but
beautiful scene actually.
Hrishikesh Mukherjee is saying that Uma is changing. My only thing about the end is that we know that she will come because it's cinema, of course. But to me, it was sort of a little bit of escapism on part of Arun, which is
Dharmendra's character.
Dharmendra's
Yeah.
character. Because see, when he's saying that usko aana hai aayegi, it is not that Uma is listening to him or whatever, right? That I mean, and you, I mean, the progression of that character that that has been shown till that point um, doesn't kind of make that flow very smooth to me, that she will take that step and she will suddenly come out and she will do that. I just think that in real life, possibly, it
If
wouldn't
if
have
if
happened
he
that way.
hadn't if he hadn't taken
Yeah.
the step, she wouldn't have come in real
He
life.
needed to take a more active role, is my take on it. Of course, this works very wonderful as cinema, and we love it the way it is. No criticism there, but it's just a little bit removed from real life in my perspective. And that's where I'll just leave it.
No,
I mean,
the way I look at it is, it can come across both ways. It can come across as being indifferent and sort of taking Uma for granted that उसको मालूम है कि मेरे दरवाजा हमेशा उसके लिए खुले हैं. अगर उसको आना है वो आएगी. It's sort of
taking a higher stand,
taking her for
it's like a
granted.
hand-handed
It
stand.
could come across as being indifferent and taking her for granted. But to me, it is Hrishikesh Mukherjee's way of representing the confidence that Uma's Dharmendra has in Uma's character and her strength. Because I think if he doubted she will take that step, he wouldn't have said it. He would have, this is all conjecture. As you said, it's a story, it's cinema, so that's what it is. But, since we are analyzing and since we are, sort of going into the depth of things, I think that had he not had that confidence in Uma, he wouldn't have said that. It actually, it is a way of showing that the audience who still is not aware of Uma's strength and her getting up and her, becoming the woman she is, the character of Dharmendra already knows that. So he knows she's going to rebel. He knows that she's going to come. He doesn't have to do anything. That's the way I look at it. But this whole thing is quite, it's conjecture really, because that's a script, that's a story, and that's how it is. But I look at it that way, because otherwise that dialogue, that scene doesn't go with the rest of Dharmendra's character at all.
It doesn't, and that's why it stood out to me, right, saying that this is not that what this guy was, and like I said, right, I mean it ended that way, wonderful, but I don't think it happens again, right? And saying that he had the confidence in her, maybe. But I don't think that if he would have played an active role, it would have shown her as any weaker or anything like that, right? I mean, that's not by any means would have made Uma a weaker character. I think it would have just been more smooth. I mean, again, it's just me, and people have different perspectives and about how they see life, and it's driven by their own experiences as well.
It's the same scene two of us are seeing. Probably everyone who's seen it is.
Yes, actually, maybe it was the director's intention to keep it like that. To keep it for the audience's imagination or to the audience's perception.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
never know.
Exactly.
Yes.
But wonderful movie, man. I mean,
It is definitely. Anupama, actually, I must say, was a much later view for me. I had seen a lot of Hrishikesh Mukherjee movies, and for some reason, I had not ended up seeing Anupama. And Anupama, I had seen much later. Till I saw Anupama, my favorite Hrishikesh Mukherjee was undoubtedly Satyakam, which is the next film I want to talk about. But till I saw Anupama, I really, when I saw it for the first time, I was just amazed at myself that how did I miss this cinema for this long? It was always there, it was always around, and I kept reading that Anupama is a wonderful movie. There's that, but I somehow had never seen it.
It is not aired on TV much also for some reason.
And Anupama, I think, is relatively underrated, if you ask me, right?
Yes, it is underrated.
People talk about Satyakam and Abhimaan and Mili and those kind of movies. I don't know if people would talk so much about Anupama. I don't know why.
I wouldn't know why they wouldn't, because Anupama
It was a commercial success as well. That's why he kept his house's name as Anupama.
Incidentally, Anupama and Phool Aur Patthar released in the same year, so Dharmendra had to, two ends of the spectrum.
But it also shows his
versatility as
comfort level, versatility in both kind of. I always felt that he was one of those rare actors who was equally adept in handling romantic and action.
Yeah, and even sensitive roles. I mean, if you look at his career graph with Bimal Roy and Hrishikesh Mukherjee, and completely different kind of movies from what he's known for usually. The action hero and He-Man, and whenever Hrishikesh Mukherjee or Bimal Roy have cast Dharmendra, it's a completely different side to his persona.
Yes.
Maybe that can be a separate chat some other time. the underutilization of Dharmendra as an actor. But Anupama remains a huge favorite, as does Satyakam and Sharmila Tagore as Ranjana. Again, both my favorite characters are both Sharmila Tagore movies, Anupama and Satyakam. And I think Ranjana is yet another example of a strong woman. And, Rishikesh Mukherjee's portrayal of strong women and women with their own mind and their thoughts and their very decisiveness of their character is a little different from the regular screaming, shouting, fist pumping
Absolutely.
show of strength. I mean, again, like Anupama, Sharmila Tagore in Satyakam is silent for large parts of the movie. She plays, a secondary role to the protagonist, to the main character of Satyapriya. But her strength is unquestionable. Her strength is unquestionable. She gives in 100%. In her relationship with Dharmendra, knowing very well that she doesn't get back as much as she gives. We realize quite early on in their marriage that there is no physical intimacy. There is no, that kind of a relationship between husband and wife. And, she pines for it. She pines for being close to Dharmendra. And he tells her that, I think there's a scene where he tells her, मैं तुम्हें बाकी सब कुछ देता हूँ ना, making it very obvious that, somewhere down the line, he too is judgmental of her past or, the incidents that have happened with her. And he probably marries her out of a certain sense of guilt because he feels responsible for, in a way, of what happens to her. But I think she plays quite a formidable, I wouldn't say opponent, but the other side of the spectrum as Dharmendra is, and she is equally strong in her convictions and her views on life. And she points out to Dharmendra the times where she feels that he's being too rigid and he feels he's being too Dharmendra's character actually is quite dogmatic and he's quite rigid and inflexible and just refusing to yield at any time. It makes it very uncomfortable. I mean, even while watching the movie, one wonders how can anyone live with a person like that. And Sharmila lives
he
with
was
him.
a victim of his own principle.
Yeah, and Sharmila lives with him with all her love for him. That doesn't diminish throughout the movie. And I think the last scene is such an emotionally manipulative scene where where Dharmendra signs on the paper, knowing very well that Sharmila is going to tear it. She's going to tear it, and it's such a manipulative scene. And
Yes, I mean, he's taking her for granted. I mean,
he know, and he actually tells her कि मुझे मालूम था तुम ये फाड़ दोगी. It's amazing that.
It's a very reassuring discussion because all this while, I just thought I was the only person who thought, between the two. In fact, Ranjana is my more favorite character than Satyapriya, and I found a lot of issues with that character. So it's sort of reassuring that when you say that, that Satyapriya is the character.
No, Satyapriya's character is
meant to have a lot of issues with the audience. That is the intent of the character.
And the thing is, I have looked at Satyakam and it has spoken to me differently the different times I have seen it. And the last few times I have seen Satyakam, to me it is a story of his failure, really. Rather than anything else, it's more a story of a man's failure because of his refusal to yield, to bend, to be flexible.
Yes.
I remember there was a scene in the movie where Sanjeev Kumar comes to his office and he says, "Chal upar chalte," because he stays on top and he says, "एक cup chai पीते हैं," and he says कि नहीं मैं duty पे हूँ. I cannot go up. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think I mean, Sanjeev Kumar says actually at one point, too much of everything is not good.
It's one of my favorite scenes when the two of them are at conflict. Sanjeev Kumar is sitting and he's standing, and and Sanjeev Kumar just silences him with just a few words.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's hurt, but couldn't retort because he
Yeah.
also somewhere knows that
He
maybe
knows.
he's
He
taking.
knows that
He knows that he's. I mean,
even the
yes, there's
scene
too much
where
of.
he sacks one of his employees. He sacks one of the people, and then
Yes,
he finds out that his son or daughter, someone is ill, and he goes to their house, and
yes,
it's a magnificent portrayal of failure.
portrait, yes,
Satyakam is, he just refuses to budge. He's so dogmatic. He's
Yeah.
so fixed in his.
he refuses to be real.
Yeah, yeah. You just at times, I mean,
Yes,
which is why I empathize so much with the character of Ranjana. That sometimes I feel that if I had a life partner like that, I would like to shake that person up and say, "Get real, man."
yes,
I mean,
Yeah.
just
yes,
just get real. Don't be the way you are. As amazing it may sound,
yes,
which is why the character of Ranjana is so appealing to me. That despite that, her love for Satyapriya is never in doubt. She respects his principles. But she has her own mind. She has her, she knows where she stands, which is such a strong depiction of her character, according to me. Unfortunately, again, because Satyakam is really out and out Dharmendra, that Sharmila's performance doesn't get spoken about as much as it should, according to me.
Yeah.
Both Sharmila and Sanjeev Kumar, they were brilliant in the movie. Undoubtedly, the star of the movie is Dharmendra. It's his, I think, along with Anupama, I think it's one of his best performances ever. But
best.
Sharmila's character in Satyakam is another huge favorite of mine. Just when we were discussing Khoobsurat, Ayushman, you were talking about something which I want you to expand on a little bit about Hrishikesh Mukherjee casting
Yes,
characters away from their regular
Types.
image, and
yes, yes,
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes. See, there are a number of examples, but since the main topic is about women in Rishikesh Mukherjee's films, so I'll stick to the women here. Uh, the first portrayal obviously is of Bindu in Abhimaan and Chaitanya.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Bindu at that time was the epitome of evil, actually, if you ask me. I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
on
yeah,
screen,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I saw Abhimaan when I was very little. I was 8, 9 years old. But when I saw it again, by that time I saw at least 15, 16 of film starring Bindu,
Bindu,
where she was playing an evil stepmother, a vamp, I mean, a gangster small like Mona Darling and Zanji. So I and some analyzed something that Rishikesh Mukherjee brought the simplicity or the goodness in her in Abhiman, because that character is an extremely important character,
yes,
and it's kind of works as a catalyst sometimes for Shubir,
yeah,
character Shubir actually, and it's such a wonderfully written character. I mean, Bindu also considers that character to be her favorite, obviously, because such a huge departure, because of the huge departure from
her
her on-screen
image,
image.
yeah,
Yes, and the scene where she comes to congratulate Subir and Uma in Abhiman during the song Teri Bindiya Re.
yeah, yeah,
Such a beautifully directed scene, and
yeah.
there Bindu actually stood out. I mean, she conveyed those emotions so. I mean, it was such an heartfelt scene, and she was wonderful in it. And also in Chaitali, I mean, she played a character who is wheelchair bound, and at that time, Bindu was at her glamorous best, and such a character, a wheelchair bound, complex, layered character.
Very layered
It,
character in Chaitali, yeah,
otherwise, very layered character. It shifts from positive to grey and again back to
yeah,
positive.
yeah,
And Bindu portrayed it very beautifully, in my
yeah,
honest opinion.
yeah,
In fact,
yeah.
she was one reason for me to sit through the whole movie, which otherwise, to be very honest, is a little
Yeah,
bland
Chaitali
kind
was
of a film.
under par,
She,
considering it
yes,
was a Rishikesh Mukherjee movie. Yes,
Hrishikesh Mukherjee film. I
yes,
mean,
yes.
I mean, Asrani and Bindu were two exceptions.
Yeah. You know,
Of course, Harshita Sairabhan had
just
some
as an
best, but
aside, just it's quite interesting that
yes,
Abhimaan was in 1973, starring Amitabh Bachchan, Jaya Bhaduri, and Bindu. And
yeah.
in the same year, there was also Zanjeer, starring
Sanjeev, yes,
Amitabh, Jaya Bhaduri, and
yes.
Bindu. And just look at the
Dil Chalo
contrast
Ka Dil
in
Chala Ke.
not just the movies, but in Bindu's characters in the two movies. You know,
And
just
character, yes,
the
yes, yes.
quintessential Mona Darling and
Yeah, Mona Darling.
her
And
character in Abhimaan.
actually, that's also a reflection of how underutilized those actresses were.
Yeah, yeah,
Another actress which comes to mind is Aruna Irani, of course in Mili and also in Buddha Milgya. That character was quite progressive in my opinion. I mean, it was a light-hearted character, but I think before that, Aruna Irani didn't do any comical role, so to speak. I mean, she used to
yeah,
come in dance numbers. It was a very
yeah,
pretty old movie. It
yeah.
came in
70.
1971. So even before Bombay to Goa and Garam Masala release, which had her in lead.
Yeah,
So
maybe
there she was
again,
playing the second.
He even
Yes.
used Arun Irani very well in a small but important role in Bemisal,
Name
where
Misal, yes,
she
yes.
plays
yes.
Vinod Mehra's secretary's role, and I think she had a very
Secretary's role,
very
yes.
there was a lot of depth to that character, you know,
Yes,
I,
yes,
I,
yes.
and
Yes.
so
and also that
And,
lovely role, small role in Golmaal, right? I mean,
yeah,
which was a very funny
oh, yes,
thing.
yes, yes,
Yeah, it
yes.
was
yeah.
nice,
With
I
Deven
think.
Vilma, yes. Film
Yeah.
within a film, yes.
But
That,
That
Mili,
scene.
I think Karunairani was fabulous, right?
yeah,
I
she
mean, again,
was
there's so much
Yes,
layers in
she
yes.
that
was
Lots
excellent.
of
character.
layers to that character.
And it
Lots
took
of layers.
strength to show a woman like that on screen, right? Where from
Yeah,
a
Like that, yes.
feel good
yeah,
director, he's
yeah,
you know
yeah.
you're showing a woman like
Yes,
that.
yes.
I thought that was right, wonderful.
I think
You know,
Again, a very
another person, you
non-sentimental.
know, who Rishikesh Mukherjee cast going against her established image would be Lalita Pawar.
I was coming to that.
Oh,
You
yes, I
know,
was coming to that. Yes,
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
I
coming
mean,
to
it
that.
was,
So
I
Lalita
mean,
Kapoor is
yes.
so
Read
different
Anand,
from everything that she's done, right? So the only thing I think, only film where Lalita Pawar in Hrishikesh Mukherjee movies is Majli Bibi, where
Majli
she
Didi,
Yeah,
still,
Majli
yeah.
Didi, yes.
plays a kind of a dark character. But if you look at all the other 3 or 4 movies that she's done, starting from Anari, right,
Anari.
where he has such a warm,
Anari, yes.
landlady to Raj Kapoor's character, and
Immortal
Yes.
character. Mrs. Disa is like,
And
yeah, and
yes,
she lives in
it was
that
the
man,
most
right?
refreshing part of the film. It was
Yeah,
the
she
most
lives
refreshing
in
and the most
that
tender
man.
part of it.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, and she knows that where what this character can do, and she always believes in him. While she's kind of always pulling his leg and all of that. कि मुझे भाड़ा दे दो and
yeah,
all of that. And then of course in 1961, I think Shrikesh Mukherjee made this beautiful movie called Mili, which again we don't talk about so much. I
Name
do not know
Lily,
why,
yes, one of
right?
my
I mean,
favorites. Yes,
it's an underrated film,
yeah.
according to me.
very, very much underrated. Very much underrated.
But look at Lalita Pawar's character. Again, she's like this woman who comes to this locality, and then everybody kind of loves her, and then they start calling her Main Didi, and
Yes,
then how
yes.
she's kind of doing everything in her life for those people, and also for Tanuja, right? I mean, who's like, okay, Tanuja looks so beautiful in that movie, right? I
Yeah,
mean, very
yeah,
fresh, and
Beautiful,
I think one of her first
fresh,
movies. I
yes.
do not know one of her
was that
early
her only
movies.
movie with Rishikesh Mukherjee? I think, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, yes, only film.
Then finally, of course, in Anand, she
Anand.
plays this matron,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think the relationship that she has with Anand is brilliant in terms of
Brilliant.
the kind of chemistry that they share and all of that.
आपको लोग
And
sister क्यों बुलाते हैं?
आपको लोग सिस्टर क्यों बुलाते हैं मदर बुलाना चाहिए इट्स
Mother
लाइक
Bulash, yes.
ऋषिकेश मुखर्जी इज प्लेइंग homage to the
Yes.
mother that he wanted Lalita Pawar to be
To
across all
be,
these things,
yes.
right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Again, he uses the name Mrs. Disa,
Mrs.
I mean,
Desai, yeah,
Mother
The
Mrs.
Disa,
Disa in
yes.
that, right? So he's kind of going back to the first film
yeah,
he did with,
yeah.
with her.
Lalita Pawar.
So I think Lalita Pawar was fabulous. I also want to, suddenly remembered another character, right? I don't know. Again, it's a forgettable film from Hrishikesh Mukherjee called Pyar Ka Sapna, and there was this character of Helen in that movie.
Helen,
Again,
yes, yes, yes.
small role, but again a very
Yes.
positive role. I don't know
Yes,
how
yes.
many movies where Helen has done, things beyond just being
Just a
being
cabaret.
the cabaret girl,
I'm a
right?
dancer, especially in
Uh,
those days, in late
yeah,
60s. I
yeah,
don't think.
but there, she kind of, have made her the daughter and all of that. So I think that was sweetly done. So again, cast against type, a typical negative vamp kind of, actress. You take her and you kind of provide a spin to her.
Even
And
cast against type, take a movie like Rang Birangi, for instance. He's cast
yes,
Parveen Babi as the
Role
housewife.
reversal.
who
You
will
know,
imagine
Parveen
that,
Babi
right?
as the
Yeah,
housewife wearing
yeah.
saris and completely domesticated, and Deepthi Nawal as the glamorous secretary. Who would have
And both of
imagined,
them wonderful.
Yeah,
Both
who
of
would
them
have
were so
imagined?
Both of
wonderful.
Exactly,
them
and
were
both
wonderful in
are
the film.
completely comfortable in what they're doing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just to the credit of Hrishikesh Mukherjee that he can even think that way. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
before seeing the movie, if you know one's going to be an attractive secretary and one's going to be a domesticated housewife, you just
No,
swap the roles. You think it's going to be
yes.
Deepthi Nawal and Parveen Babi, and he's just
Yeah,
reversed
I
it
mean,
so beautifully.
Parveen and Dikti would only be happy that they could show their range, in
I'm
terms of
sure.
what
I'm
they could
sure.
do,
Yes,
right?
I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But they never looked awkward in a single scene. I
No,
mean,
no, exactly. They just both are so
they were
brilliant.
they were
They
in the
look so
zone. I
natural.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And also, if you think about it, right now the queen of Palitana, Sonia Sadi,
Ah.
yes, I mean, who would have thought that she would appear in a Hrishikesh Mukherjee film? Before that, she did this Johar Mahmood series and
The Ayush
all that,
Johar,
and her role had such a big twist in the film. In Punjabi.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
since we're talking about strong women characters, I remember you mentioning this once, Jayashree. The two roles portrayed by Rakhi in two Rishikesh Mukherjee movies, Bemisal and Jurmana. You know,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah, yeah. So I think that is again, two again very interesting movies if you look at it, right? I mean, he takes the same star cast of Rakhi, Amitabh Bachchan, and Vinod Mehra, and he makes like two different films out of them, right? There are similarities and there are a lot of dissimilarities, right? So, he's ultimately telling a story about two friends falling in love with the same girl, and then what happens. But if you look at Jurmana, right, I think it is a more traditional story of what happens when the two guys come in and they bet to kind of woo the woman, and then one guy, of course, Mera has this whole thing around the unrequited love, so that never gets reciprocated. But with Rakhi and Amitabh, it's a completely different situation. And what Rama goes through, right, because of what in the I
Amitabh
believe
does.
was
Yeah,
Amitabh Bachchan's
yeah.
character's name does to her is it's sad at the same time, but again, it's at the end of the day, the challenges and the issues that they have, they get resolved, and ultimately, it all comes together. But I think it's a very interesting arc from that perspective. And then, a few years down the line, I think 2 or 3 years down the line, he makes Bemisal,
Bemisal,
right?
yes.
And Bemisal, of course, is based out of, from Amisher Shokha, which is from Ashutosh Mukherjee, and he kind of adapts it to Hindi screen. But I think it is such an interesting movie, and the way he again casts there, right? So one is again he's casting Vinod Mehra against type there. I mean, who would imagine that Vinod Mehra will be cast in a role like that with so much of great
Great.
characters? But I think what is, of course, stands out in Bemisal is the relationship between Kavita and Sudhir, right? I mean, it's absolutely fabulous in terms of what their chemistry is, and how their relationship pans out, and we know explicitly, of course, that Sudhir loves Kavita, and we also know, it's implied in multiple
That
layers that
Kavita loves Sudhir
actually
as well.
Kavita loves Sudhir as well, but she goes and marries Prashant, and it's not that there's any infidelity in her relationship with Prashant. Right? She's very loyal to Prashant. She has a lot of feelings with Prashant, but I think the dynamics that these two people share, right, in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
they know that they are in love, but there is a lot of respect and care for each other, and ultimately it's about you know being good in each other's lives, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's wonderfully projected, and there's so many layers in Kavita's character, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most complex women characters that
Yes,
Rishikesh Mukherjee
without a
created
doubt,
in terms of
without a doubt.
the layers, and how she behaves in situations which are which are not normal, and things like those. And I think
Dilemma was
Rakhi pulled it out beautifully. I mean, I'm not a typical Rakhi fan, but I think, give credit where it is due. I think, she
No,
was
she was. I think
fabulous
she was
in the
fabulous, and
movie. Yeah.
I think the whole Amitabh
was
Bachchan
fabulous.
Rakhi relationship in Bemisal was sort of above the grasp of a regular film goer at that time, which is why I think
Yeah.
Bemisal didn't do as well as it should have, according to me. I don't think Bemisal
Yes,
really
Yeah.
was a certified success. I'm not sure exactly whether it was a flop or a hit or an average film, but I'm sure it wasn't as big a success as one would want it to be. And I think it's primarily because the relationship between Rakhi and Amitabh was, I think, a little too esoteric or a little too
one
undefined in one way
undefined. Yeah,
for people to sort
yes.
of react to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think even today I have people who aren't sure what the relationship exactly is, because
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
undefined, and I think there lies the beauty, because
And that is by design, right?
exactly,
So,
exactly,
Yeah,
they
like
exactly.
wanted to make that movie.
one of my friends who didn't like Bemisal, actually, he said the major reason for not liking Bemisal is that the relation was undefined. That's what he said. Quoted.
Yeah. But
And he
that's
couldn't stand
exactly, I
that.
think, what Rishikesh Mukherjee wanted.
Wanted.
He
He
Yeah,
wanted,
wanted
exactly.
yes,
he
yes,
wanted
yes,
the closest he came to defining it was when he calls her Sakhi, and Om Shiv Puri says that Krishan Bhagwan Arjun
yes,
और द्रौपदी की रक्षा करते थे, और so that's the
yes, yes,
closest he came
Yeah.
to sort of establishing the equation between the three of them. That's the closest one came, but otherwise it was
yes.
quite an undefined relationship. And
Yeah.
Bemisal is one of my favorite Rishikesh
This
Mukherjee
is fun
movies,
as
Actually,
well.
and
Yeah.
all the three characters were pretty complex in their own ways.
Very
yes,
complex.
yes,
Very
yes,
complex. Their motivations were,
yeah,
there were a lot
Yes,
of grayness
even if
in
you take
everybody.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
yes,
Even if you take Vinod Mehra's portrayal in the first of the movies, that son of a rich man and son of a judge actually, and doctor, a happy-go-lucky, very decent kind of a man. And when he becomes a doctor, and his entire, I mean, the entire how his morals change, how his values change, and he's in his own world again. Towards the end of the movie, actually, the movie is told in a flashback,
yeah,
so at the end of the movie, he repents for his deeds. So it's such a
Yeah.
layered character. Amitabh Bachchan, obviously, this character was the most layered, probably. I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
his finest portrayals, according to me.
absolutely,
One of his best
absolutely,
performances. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
In fact, even if I know this is right, the part of the story about his elder brother and that whole backstory. But if you ask me, even if you take out that backstory and you just focus on that relationship, I think it would have still been very, very beautiful. Of course, some of this character
Yes,
motivations could not have come in
Yeah,
that
I
strong.
think the backstory is important. In fact, that's one criticism I had read
yes,
somewhere, that why was unnecessarily the brother's character brought in, and just had nothing to
because
do.
it wasn't a lot.
I think a lot of Amitabh's complexities in his character stems out of that
Yes,
subplot. His
yes, especially his,
his entire outlook on women, and why his relationship with Rakhi is so special, because she doesn't fall into that category. Why his outlook on women
category.
is for all other women and not the same for
Yeah,
Rakhi. I think it has a lot to do with that subplot. So I think Amitabh's character complexities actually are born out of that subplot. So I think it's very important to the movie. And Amitabh is, I mean, he is fabulous in
Fabulous.
Remakes. I always say that Salim Javed is credited for creating the angry young man, but Amitabh in Namak Haram, Amitabh Bachchan in Mili,
Millie,
and
yes.
in parts
Also,
of Bemisal, I think are equally effective as the angry young man. I mean,
Even Alap to an
his
Alap,
extent,
even his
right?
yes, yes,
character
yes,
in Jurmana also.
yes,
Yeah,
Even in
yeah.
Jurmana also, his character has got
yeah,
a lot of angst,
yeah, yeah,
and it's a very
Yeah.
yeah,
complex character,
I,
to be
yeah.
I,
very
I
honest.
personally like this angry young man a lot more than the Salim Javed angry
I
young man.
like
If you
both.
ask.
I like
No,
both, but
it is my.
No, I like both.
but I think amongst his angry young man, of course, we have veered away from the main topic magnificently. But I think we've covered most of the women
Yeah.
Most
characters
of
we wanted
yes,
to
yes.
talk about. So we just take the liberty of discussing this a little more. I think for me personally, my favorite angry young man character of Amitabh is that of Mili in Mili.
Mine
Absolutely.
too.
Shekhar
Mine
Dayal. I
too.
mean, he is. Again, it's like Sharmila's character in Anupama. It's more than what he speaks. It's
Yes.
the way he looks. It's the way his eyes do all the talking. In
Brooding.
Millie,
It is
that
Brooding.
my.
that sense of
Mili,
angst and that
yeah.
sense of brooding
Yeah.
is magnificent.
Yes.
Absolutely
Mili is
magnificent.
my number one Amitabh Bachchan performance of all times, right? I mean, I think it's absolutely superb. And again, Mili is my number one Jaya Bhaduri performance of all times also.
So it's a number one Rishikesh Mukherjee movie.
And it is my number one Hrishi movie, right? So, and I would put Abhimaan as number two on all those three categories, right? So that's how it is for me. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely lovely. One more thing, I think, since we just want to complete the circle about women characters in
Yeah.
Hrishikesh Mukherjee movies, I think one thing that we can also slightly touch upon, and that's a trend in his movies, is how, relatively infamous actresses have been cast in his movies in
Yes. Yes.
important roles, right? So the first thing that that I remember is Swaroop Sampath, right? So
Narangaram.
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you look at
Yes. Of course.
Narangaram, we don't think of Swaroop Sampath so much when we talk about things,
True.
but he takes somebody like her and places in a pretty complex character. Again, that
Yeah.
one is right. I mean, a
Yeah.
woman who's being wooed by like X number of men, but she's always holding her ground, right?
Yeah.
So she's not to be taken for a ride
Yeah.
because of whoever
Yeah.
comes in, whatever position of
Yes.
authority that they are in. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't matter to her, who
Yeah.
they are in
Yeah.
their life.
Yeah.
It's about what her belief and her desires and
Yeah.
everything it is. And
Yeah.
he says
Of
that
course.
हमें अपनी राहों की दिशा मिल गई है, right? So
Love that
Yes.
beautifully
song. Beautiful
that
song.
song,
हमें
right?
रास्तों पे या yes.
जरूरत नहीं है. So I think that was a wonderful depiction of relatively unknown characters
Sure. Sure.
in the sort of in a Hrishikesh Mukherjee movie and how to place them in important roles. We also talked about Sumita Sanyal. I think she has done
Smita
that
Sanyal.
multiple times,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In Goody, like again how beautiful her
She was
delivery was.
beautiful.
Even,
She
Yeah,
was
and
even in
she
Ashirvad.
was small role in Anand, but she was quite effective.
Yeah.
She was quite
yes.
effective. Yes.
And Ashirvad, of course.
Ashirvad, of course.
Again an underrated gem
Very
of
underrated movie.
Hrishikesh,
Very
right? So I think it's wonderfully done from that
I
perspective.
think even
So,
Leela Naidu, for that matter, not a very prolific,
Yeah.
actor.
Yeah, her filmography is also quite limited.
Yeah, very very limited. And for Hrishikesh
limited.
Mukherjee to
4
have
films,
the
I guess.
conviction to cast her in the title role as a central character in the movie, it's quite amazing.
yeah.
I think this has
Think of
been
anyone else as Anuradha.
exactly. That's the beauty of Hrishikesh Mukherjee, that he will conceptualize and visualize someone in the role and then present it in such a way that you really can't think of anyone else doing that role but that person.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we've had a
Yeah.
wonderful discussion. It's been
Oh, yes.
it's been longer than I think what any of us imagined it would be. But then when you talk about Rishikesh Mukherjee's cinema, one just invariably loses track of time. And I think I've had a wonderful
Correct.
time discussing some of my favorite films with both of you.
And it couldn't
Feeling
be
is
a
mutual.
opportune moment to discuss Hrishikesh Mukherjee's movies because, as both of you all know, right, so 30th September is his birthday,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
I think we are at the cusp
Yes.
of it, and it couldn't have been a better opportunity to talk
Better,
about
yes,
such a amazing person, right? So and his work, which is fabulous. So,
Absolutely. Now, thank you guys. Thank you, Ayushman and Jayashree. It's
My
been
pleasure.
wonderful chatting with
Wonderful.
both of you, and
Exactly.
let's hope we can do this again on some topic which all three of us, feel as strongly as we do about this one.
And like I mentioned, right? I mean, my whole interest in doing this was to learn from both of you, and I think I have learned quite a bit, in
No,
this discussion.
I think it's been a very healthy exchange of ideas, and I think
Healthy exchange of
we've all come
perceptions.
across with different points of view which probably we hadn't looked at while watching these movies, and it's been quite enlightening for all of us. I think that
Very
way.
engaging and very very enriching is what I would say, and I had a fabulous time. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, both you guys, for coming in, and let's hope we can have this chat again on some other topic. Soon.
Sure.
Bye bye, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you.